What's up, guys? Welcome to what is not the format I was intending to review this series as, but after actually getting into it, I think this is much more appropriate than weekly because this show is not what I expected, and it kind of just makes me sad. So let's just get into it. So I hadn't really gotten into a completely sight unseen show in a long time, and I felt like Listeners was actually going to be that show because I love, believe me, I cannot overstate how much I love Mecha City Actors and the entire Kagura project that Jin did, and seeing a new project from anything even remotely related to Mecha City Actors, especially from the main creator of the series, I was all on board. I was, sign me up, let's do it. And considering that it was primarily music themed, not story themed told through music, I was actually kind of excited to see where they were going to go with the whole world based on musical sort of ideas and stuff like that. And it wasn't what I expected. So obviously I'm going to be kind of summarizing the current episodes that are out because this is an initial impressions video. But yeah, from what's out right now, it's weird. So at the time of recording this, there are 4 episodes out, and the first 3 are okay. It sort of went from up to down to back up, and then the 4th one came out, and that's where a lot of my problems come from. So number 1, the things that I actually really like about this series, the opening is badass. The art style, I saw some people complaining about the animation in the art style, but a lot of the moments that they were complaining about were in the moments that were 3D animated as opposed to 2D animated during a lot of the fights, and I kind of looked at those scenes and thought to myself, you guys wanted them to spend the money to actually 2D animate that? I think you're being a little unreasonable. I think they implement the animation in the 2D versus 3D fairly well, though it is fairly obvious when they are 3D, but I get why they use it. The endings are extremely creative because each ending is sort of themed visually to the episode that you just watched, and the music is different, at least so far, for each ending, which is really cool. I can't remember an anime that I've seen that actually does that, so that was really cool. And the soundtrack is badass. The background music, all of that is really, really cool and really well done, and those are all the things that I really like about the series. And to a degree, I guess we'll get into the episodes now. The first episode is very interesting because it introduces us to the concept of players, to the earless, to the way the world is built and the rules of the world to some degree, nothing too drastic, and it sort of eases you into what the main character Echo's goals are, and we kind of get to meet Mew, who we aren't really sure at all who she is, other than the fact that she looks a lot like the Jimi Hendrix knockoff character that they're kind of aiming to find at some point in this series. But apart from that, we don't really know much about her, and she doesn't really know much about herself because, well, she has amnesia, because, original storytelling, everybody. I'm not gonna be very picky about the whole amnesia thing. If that's where you're gonna start your story, as long as you end it somewhere creative and you use the amnesia to the best advantage to tell a story, I'm not really gonna complain. And as long as they do that, which I really hope they do, we'll see. Now, normally when I watch an anime, I take the same approach as a lot of people, which is the 3-show rule, which is if I am not hooked by 3 episodes, I'm not going to watch it anymore. And this episode, or this series, would fall into that category if I wasn't invested in trying to review it, and also if it weren't for the fact that Jin's name is attached to it. So let me just say right now that I would have dropped this show by episode 3, probably dropped it by episode 4 if I had gotten past episode 3, solely because Episode 1 really hooked me. Episode 2 started to lose my attention, and Episode 3 sort of brought it back, but it didn't really pay too much off at all. So I already described Episode 1 and how it was sort of an establishing the rules of the world and establishing the characters sort of episode. Then we get in Episode 2, which is a travel episode, and it's also where my first little bit of disappointment arrives, which is where we meet the 3 sort of witch sister players, and I thought because of the way that they were presented in the original sort of 2D still animation and the fully well done animation for the second opening, I thought that the way they were done and the way they were presented at the end of the last episode was going to lead to this mysterious sort of who are they, what is their goal? I thought there was going to be this massive sort of conflict of these dark, sinister characters, and I feel like it was just a three-woman trio that was trying their hardest to be Team Rocket, because they were just so outlandishly comical, and the moments where they were actually confronted with something they weren't familiar with, they completely lost any sort of seriousness, unfortunately. Though I will say, one of the things I did find funny is Justin Briner is the English voice actor for the character Echo, and it's hilarious to me that it almost feels like he was typecast for this character, because him playing Deku in the English dub of My Hero Academia, obviously we know that Deku is a character who is obsessed with heroes and knows everything about every hero imaginable. And Echo is essentially the same kind of character, but with players. He's memorized a book that he has of all the different players, and I just find that hilarious. But yeah, so episode 2 is sort of interesting at the start and then sort of falls off the rails for me, not only because the train car they're on literally falls off the rails, but because of the fact that this mystique of these three mysterious unknown female villains is just kind of ruined, and they seem just like, like I said, Team Rocket. And of course, the fact that they're defeated so handily by the beginning of episode 3 doesn't really help. Now, episode 3 is where a lot of people were dropping it, and I potentially would have dropped it, except I tend to like episodes like these, which is to say I tend to like episodes that are very methodical and expositional, especially early on in a series, because it actually gives you an idea of how the world is supposed to work, the rules, the characters, the environment you're in. It gives you a context of the world that you've been dumped in, especially considering that a lot of times if you're 2 episodes in and you only have a handful of rules to follow or understand about the world, it's going to be kind of hard to continue. And this episode, being as expositional as it is, means that a lot of people complain about it because it's not exposition presented in a more action-packed way, which I get, but on the same hand, if you don't have that exposition and you don't have a sort of calm moment to solely focus on the exposition, you're going to kind of lose a lot of that detail because you're paying attention to the action, if there's action going on. So I like episodes like these. I know a lot of people tend to disagree with me, but that's my opinion alone. I did like episode 3 just because we got some history, we got some exposition, some world building, and a bit of action towards the end, as well as sort of the, now we sort of have a goal to the initial setting out quest thing. I don't know. But with our characters being given a goal by episode 3, it sort of shows that the first 2 episodes of our characters sort of setting out on their adventure didn't really have a goal for our characters, which is why it was kind of confusing. They sort of left in a rush, which I kind of liked that idea of them leaving in a rush, but then we didn't really have an overall goal other than for Mew to figure out who she was. And with Echo, he's sort of this, dragged into the scenario because he thought that he accidentally killed the mayor of the town and all that kind of stuff. It didn't give us a solid goal. And initially, and actually several times throughout episodes 1, 2, and 3, there was this sort of idea of the characters telling each other to just go, go away, head home, or leave me, or do this. And it just feels like they're constantly pushing each other apart. Maybe that dynamic will change, but that was sort of what I felt. But overall, being given a goal in episode 3, it's better late than never, and at least it's something that we can sort of feasibly attain. And then, of course, having that bit of history, we now know sort of what happened. We have an idea of sort of what the history of Mew is, but it's only assumed. It's not set in stone. It's interesting enough that I probably would have watched on to episode 4, and then I got to episode 4. So you may have noticed that I'm wearing a Nirvana shirt, and that actually was not by mistake, because this episode is called Teen Spirit, and I've got so many things to say about this episode. So there's a difference in writing between references that are subtle and the people who are paying attention will get, and then just basically going, hey, music's a thing, right? And this episode is basically falling in the second camp. So to give you an idea of good references, we have things like My Hero Academia with the whole idea that Gran Torino is the sort of Yoda character as an homage to Yoda, especially considering that he's in the Dagobah Prefecture of Japan, Dagobah system from Star Wars. That's a clever reference. Or a show like Bungo Stray Dogs, where each of the characters is a reference to a literary author, and their tropes and character quirks are based off of the characters, or people rather, that they were actually supposed to be mimicking in the show, who existed in real life. Those are really good references, because if you didn't know about one of the authors that one of the characters from Bungo Stray Dogs is supposed to be a reference to, you wouldn't really understand why he's constantly trying to kill himself, or you wouldn't understand and just accept Gran Torino as some crazy old short dude who was, a mentor to both All Might and Deku. You would just accept him as that character and not understand why he is the way he is until you kind of see who Yoda is and why he's referencing. Anyway, those are good references for those reasons. You have to actually have context and understand. It's not just pushed into your face. I'm rambling about this because I'm trying to think of the nicest way to say this, and I really can't. Just getting into it, episode 4 is primarily referencing mostly Nirvana, but also makes quite a few references to the grunge scene of the 90s just in general. I'll give you an example here. So obviously we have the character Nier, who we're introduced to at the start. Nier, Nirvana, gender-bent Kurt Cobain, shirt that says Polly, because Polly is a song that Nirvana wrote. Get it? Music, right? Then we have a reference that literally made me sit up in my chair and go, holy shit, because I really don't know how to feel about that, because as a fan of music in general and Nirvana, I kind of get the reference and I want to laugh about it, but it's also really kind of tragic and it's just really bad. I'm just going to tell you. So the character that sort of corrupts and uses Nier, who is the Kurt Cobain lookalike gender-bent version or whatever, is named Hole. Now, for those of you who don't get that reference, Hole is the band created by Courtney Love, the widow of Kurt Cobain. And for a lot of people who enjoy music and enjoy the general sort of mentality of Kurt Cobain's style of music and Nirvana and the grunge scene in general, the whole Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love thing is very controversial for a lot of people, because it's sort of thought/implied that Courtney Love is one of the reasons that Kurt Cobain was sort of driven to kill himself. And in this episode, the character Hole, which is a reference to Courtney Love's band, is the character that uses and drives the Kurt Cobain character Nier to be kind of crazy, and yeah. So that reference was kind of out of left field and surprising, and I'm amazed that, Courtney Love, being as Sue happy as she is, hasn't gone after this series yet. But anyway, the next reference is also just as blatantly in your face. Actually, this reference isn't nearly as blatantly in your face for a music fan, but the character who is the sort of principal of this freak school, whatever, that they're in episode 4, is a character designed after the head woman, the lead singer for, what was the band? Sonic Youth. And so that was sort of a more obscure reference. I'm okay with that one a bit, but it's still, obviously like music, right? The drug that they're trying to find is called Teen Spirit because, hey, that's a song made by Nirvana. And I don't want to sort of just bombard you with references to complain about them, but let me just run through a few of the references that I caught while I was watching this, because I'm a bit of a music nerd. I mean, most of the shows that I pick are based off of, the songs that I hear from them, and I can't wait for the OST for this series, but yeah, let me just go over some of the references that I caught. So, the school that they go to try to find more information on Jimmy Stone Freed, the character who's supposed to look like Jimi Hendrix, and whose last name is based off of a song by Jimi Hendrix, is called Freak Scene Academy, which is a song by Dinosaur Jr. called Freak Scene. So there's 2 references right out of the gate. Of course, Nier being named Nier and looking like Kurt Cobain because Nier and Nirvana, Hole and the whole Courtney Love crap and the 2 of them and all that kind of stuff. Those are some references that, the first 2 I could see kind of going over some people's heads, but whatever. The headmaster of the school being sort of a character designed off of the lead singer for Sonic Youth, I can understand that as well. That's another one that's sort of okay, I could see how people could miss that one, but again, still a bit of a reference overload. There are also character designs in the episode that are meant to look like band members from Smashing Pumpkins, Mudhoney, the Pixies, all these little references here and there, and that's kind of cool. I'm kind of getting burned out already by the references, but whatever. Then we get to the final fight, and this is where my complaints really come in, because there's a difference between clever writing and sort of just taking music and going, hey, this thing, remember? So during the fight between Nier and Mew, Nier is literally just speaking the lyrics of Smells Like Teen Spirit, saying, load up on guns, bring your friends, it's fun to lose and to pretend. With the lights out, the danger's gone. Here we are now, amuse us, entertain us. Anybody, like, kind of realize how shoehorned in that is? It didn't really even work with the overall... God. I'm holding out hope that maybe this series will improve. But I've rambled enough about episode 4 to kind of get my ideas across. So, first 2 episodes, good. Okay. For episode 2, I was not super engaged. Episode 3, I was okay with because it was world building. I'm one of the weird people who actually is into shows like that and into episodes like that. And then episode 4 just kind of ruined it all for me. I'm completely honest here. Because the references aren't really references when you're just straight up pointing to it and going, I'm referencing that thing. That's not a reference. You're just pointing to something and saying, hey, remember this thing existed? I'm holding out hope, but I really don't think it's going to happen, that they start to sort of weave the references in with the rest of the story a little better. But I really don't think that's going to happen, considering that the next episode has a character that looks like Prince, and they're going to the Purple Kingdom. So yeah, overall, I was going to do a weekly review of this series, and I was going to catch up to the most recent episodes, do a review, and then just do it weekly. But I don't feel like that's really going to work for this series, considering that, unfortunately, I don't really know how the next few episodes are going to go, as does nobody knows how these next few episodes are going to go. So really, I'm not holding out hope for a massive improvement, but I'm hoping that maybe by the end of this series I'll have better things to say. But just going off of the fact that they went from like a really good start with awesome music, awesome visuals, to the second episode, which had a great opening where they finally did like the actual animation with movement for the opening, and the story was kind of okay, a bit of action, but kind of disappointing about the main villains, or who I thought were going to be main villains, and they weren't. To the third episode, which was good, but I'm probably one of the few people who actually enjoys episodes like that. On episode 4, which just set a new low, in my opinion, for the way that the series has been going. Again, I hope that by the end of this series I'll have better things to say, but based on those few episodes I've seen so far, I'm not holding out too much hope, especially with the preview for the next episode and the straight up, like, I already know what the 2 references are going to be. I'm not looking forward to it, I'm sorry. I was really hoping that this series was going to be like a real ringer. I was hoping to really just have my socks knocked off by this series, but that didn't happen, and I'm kind of bummed out because of it. But hopefully you guys are enjoying it or finding another show to enjoy, or maybe you share my opinions. Maybe you got a lot of the references and also had the, like, we get it sort of mentality, but I don't know. Let me know in the comments, because I'm really curious to see what you all think about this series and if you're watching it. And do you actually enjoy this? Do you like the just complete hammered into your head references? I know that sounds like a sort of directed question because I'm putting my own spin on it, but do you like those kinds of references? I know that I really don't, but maybe you guys do. How many of the references do you actually get, too? I'm curious. And otherwise, yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Sorry that I had to basically make one giant review/update video to tell you that I'm not going to be doing this series weekly, but that's what it is. So make sure to like and subscribe so you guys can see if I have changing thoughts on this series as it comes out. And yeah, apart from that, I'll see you on the next video. Make sure to be there and have a good one. Hey, if y'all want to know a little secret, these videos don't really make me squat. And if I want to make this YouTube thing a career, I got to make more than squat. And I'm not making squat at all right now. So, hey, if you guys want to support me actively, you can go on to the Teesprings link down in the description and buy a shirt. I've been pushing this so hard and it doesn't go very far, but it's worth it. Check out the really cool designs. I got some more stuff coming, including some mask designs I'm working on with the plague upon us. So yeah, go check it out. And bye.